In an empty theater, a whispered confession changes everything: secrets, longing, and a love that refuses to fade into silence. The stage light flickered once, then steadied, just as Jungkook's grip tightened around Jimin's wrist, pulling him forward into the hollow center of the abandoned theater. Dust swirled in the air like ghosts disturbed after years of silence. The camera crew had already stepped out for a break, their laughter fatting down the corridor, leaving behind only the hum of a single overhead lamp and the echo of footsteps that no longer existed. "Jungkook, what are you doing?" Jimin's voice came out softer than he intended, almost swallowed by the vast emptiness around them. Jungkook didn't answer at first. He just kept walking until the two of them stood directly beneath the light, its pale glow spilling over their faces, isolating them from the rest of the world. The stage beneath their feet creaked faintly, as if it remembered every performance it had ever carried and was waiting for one more. Then Jungkook turned. His eyes were different, not the playful, teasing warmth Jimin had known for years, not the calm professionalism he wore during filming. This was something raw, something unguarded. Something dangerous. "If this is our story," Jungkook whispered, his voice trembling in a way Jimin had never heard before, "I don't want it to end." The words hung between them, heavier than the silence. Jimin felt his chest tighten. This wasn't part of the script. It wasn't a joke either. Jungkook didn't joke like this, not with that look in his eyes, like he was standing at the edge of something he couldn't come back from. "Why are you saying that now?" Jimin asked, trying to keep his voice steady, but it cracked anyway. "We're just filming, they'll be back any minute." Jungkook shook his head slowly, almost like he hadn't even heard the words. "Do you ever feel it?" he asked instead. "Like everything we've been doing, every scene, every line, none of it is really acting." Jimin froze. There it was, that fear he never wanted to name. He had buried it under years of laughter, late-night conversations, shared glances that lasted just a second too long. He told himself it was normal, that closeness didn't have to mean anything more. But now, standing under that lonely light, with Jungkook looking at him like he was the only thing that mattered, it was impossible to pretend anymore. "You're tired," Jimin said quietly, pulling his hand back though the warmth lingered. "We've been filming non-stop, you're just confused." Jungkook let out a soft, humorless laugh. "I wish it were that simple." He stepped closer. Too close. Jimin could hear his breathing now, uneven, almost desperate. He could see the faint shadows under Jungkook's eyes, the tension in his jaw like he'd been holding something back for far too long. "I've tried to ignore it," Jungkook continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "I told myself it would pass, that it was just because we're always together, always pretending to be something we're not." His gaze dropped for a moment, then lifted again, sharper this time, more certain. But it didn't pass. Jimin's heart pounded so loudly, he was sure it echoed through the empty theater. "Jungkook." "I remember everything," Jungkook said, cutting him off. "The first time you laughed at something I said that wasn't even funny, the way you always fix your sleeves when you're nervous, the way you look at the stage before you step onto it like you're asking it for permission." Jimin's breath caught. Those were things no one else noticed. Things no one else should notice. "You don't get to say things like that," Jimin said, but his voice was weak, lacking conviction. "You don't get to make it real." "But it is real," Jungkook's voice broke slightly, "at least for me." The words hit harder than anything else. For a moment, neither of them moved. The theater seemed to hold its breath with them, every shadow leaning closer, every creak of the wood amplified in the stillness. Jimin felt something unravel inside him, something he had kept tightly controlled for years. Fear, yes, but also something warmer, something far more dangerous. "What happens after this?" Jimin asked finally, his voice quieter now, almost fragile. "After the filming ends, after the lights go out?" Jungkook didn't hesitate. "I don't know," he admitted, "that's what scares me." He reached out again, slower this time, giving Jimin the chance to pull away. Jimin didn't. Their fingers brushed just barely, but it was enough to send a jolt through both of them. "I'm scared too," Jimin whispered. It was the first honest thing he had said. Jungkook exhaled shakily, like he had been holding that breath for years. "Then stay," he said, Not for the cameras, not for anyone else, just stay here with me for a little longer. Jimin looked around. The empty seats stretched endlessly into darkness. The stage lights cast long shadows that seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. The air smelled faintly of old wood and forgotten memories. It felt like a place outside of time. A place where choices mattered more. Slowly Jimin nodded. Just for a little longer. Jungkook's lips curved into the faintest smile, not the bright, carefree one everyone else knew, but something softer, more real. They stood there together under that single lamp, the world outside forgotten. And for the first time, neither of them tried to pretend that what they felt was just part of a story. The silence didn't break gently, it shattered. The backstage door slammed open with a violent echo that cut straight through the fragile stillness, and both of them jerked apart instinctively, like they had been caught in something forbidden. "Jungkook, Jimin, where did you?" The voice stopped. A staff member stood frozen at the edge of the stage, eyes flicking between them, sensing something off, something charged, something that didn't belong to rehearsals or scripts. Jungkook stepped back first, running a hand through his hair, his expression snapping back into something controlled, too controlled. "We're here," he said casually, though his voice carried a tightness Jimin recognized instantly. "Just going over the scene." The staff member hesitated, clearly unconvinced, but nodded anyway. "We're ready to resume, director's waiting." "Got it," Jimin replied quickly, his tone lighter than he felt. "We'll be there." The door closed again, leaving behind a different kind of silence, one that pressed heavier against their chests. Neither of them moved for a moment. Then Jimin let out a shaky breath and turned away first. "We should go," he said. But Jungkook didn't move. "Is that it?" he asked quietly. Jimin stopped. "That's not fair," he muttered, his back still turned. "You can't just drop something like that on me and expect an answer right away." "I'm not asking for an answer," Jungkook shot back, sharper this time. "I'm asking you not to pretend it didn't happen." Jimin turned around then, frustration flashing across his face. "I'm not pretending," he said, his voice rising. "I'm trying to think. There's a difference." Jungkook stepped closer again, the distance between them shrinking like gravity itself was pulling them together. "You've had years to think, Jimin." The words landed like a blow. Jimin's expression faltered. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means," Jungkook said, his voice lower now, more intense, "I'm not the only one who feels this." "That's not true." "Then look at me and say it doesn't matter." Jimin opened his mouth. And stopped. Because Jungkook was right there, eyes locked onto his, searching, demanding, refusing to let him hide behind easy excuses. "Say it. Say it's nothing. Say it's just acting." But Jimin couldn't. His silence was louder than any confession. Jungkook let out a quiet, almost broken laugh. "Yeah, that's what I thought." Jimin's chest tightened. "You don't understand." "Then make me understand," Jungkook interrupted, his voice suddenly rising, raw and unfiltered. "Because from where I'm standing it looks like you've been running away from this for a long time." "I'm not running." "Then what are you doing?" Jungkook demanded. "Because every time things get real you step back, every time I get close you act like it's too much." "Because it is too much," Jimin snapped, the words bursting out before he could stop them. The force of his own voice startled even him. The theater seemed to echo his confession, amplifying it, exposing it. Jungkook stilled. "Why?" he asked softer now. Jimin's hands trembled slightly at his sides, he clenched them into fists trying to ground himself. "Because if this is real," he began, his voice unsteady, "then it changes everything." Jungkook didn't look away. "Maybe it's supposed to." Jimin shook his head quickly. "No, you don't get it. We have people watching us all the time. Cameras, fans, expectations, everything we do gets analyzed, twisted." "I don't care about that." "Well, I do," Jimin shot back. "I have to. We don't live in a world where we can just feel something and act on it without consequences." Jungkook's jaw tightened. "So what?" he said. "We just ignore it, pretend it doesn't exist, go back to acting like everything between us is just for show." Jimin hesitated. And that hesitation said everything. Jungkook's expression hardened not with anger but with something more painful, disappointment. Do you know what the worst part is? He said quietly. Jimin swallowed. What? I think you felt it before I did. Jimin's breath caught. Jungkook stepped back then, creating distance this time, not physically forced but deliberate. You just chose to bury it. That's not. It is, Jungkook cut in. And I get it, I do, you're scared, you always think 10 steps ahead, always calculating what could go wrong. His voice softened slightly, but the intensity remained. But I'm tired of pretending I don't feel something just because it's inconvenient. Jimin's vision blurred slightly, though he wasn't sure why. This isn't just about you, he said quietly, it affects both of us. I know, Jungkook replied, that's why I told you. The honesty in that statement hit deeper than anything else. No games. No acting. Just truth. Jimin took a step forward, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. And what if I say I'm scared? Jungkook met his gaze. Then I'll say I am too. The simplicity of that answer broke something inside Jimin. For so long, fear had been something he carried alone, something he used as a shield, as an excuse, as a reason not to cross lines that once crossed could never be undone. But Jungkook wasn't asking him to be fearless. He was asking him to stop hiding. A distant voice echoed from the hallway again, calling their names. Reality was creeping back in. Jimin looked toward the sound, then back at Jungkook. We have to go, he said softly. Jungkook nodded. But neither of them moved right away. After this scene, Jungkook said, his voice quieter now steadier, we're not done talking. Jimin hesitated for only a second. No, he admitted, we're not. Something shifted between them then, not resolved, not settled, but acknowledged. And somehow, that made everything more dangerous. They walked off the stage side by side, not touching, not speaking, but acutely aware of every step, every breath, every inch of space between them. The lights of the set felt harsher now. The cameras colder. The script in Jimin's hands suddenly felt like a lie he wasn't sure he could perform anymore. As the director called for action and the scene began, Jimin found himself staring at Jungkook, not as a character, not as a co-actor, but as someone who had just changed everything. And when Jungkook looked back at him, there was no acting in his eyes at all. The director's voice rang sharply through the theater, but it felt distant, muted beneath the pounding of Jimin's heartbeat. Jimin, your timing was off, and Jungkook, your delivery was too intense for that line, this isn't the climax yet. A few crew members chuckled lightly, trying to ease the tension, but the atmosphere remained thick, almost suffocating. Too intense. If only they knew. Jimin forced a small nod, lowering his gaze to the script in his hands, though the words blurred together. He didn't need to read them. He knew the scene by heart. He just couldn't separate it from reality anymore. Let's reset, the director called. Positions, everyone. Jungkook stepped back into place across from him, but this time the distance felt deliberate, calculated. Like he was holding something in, forcing himself to stay within invisible boundaries. It made Jimin uneasy. More uneasy than when Jungkook had been too close. Ready, the director asked. They both nodded. Action. Jimin lifted his head, stepping into character automatically, but the moment his eyes met Jungkook, everything slipped. You're leaving, Jimin's character was supposed to sound calm, composed. But his voice came out strained. Jungkook's response came slower than usual, his gaze unwavering. I don't have a choice. The line was simple. But the way he said it. It wasn't scripted anymore. Jimin felt it like a challenge. Don't lie to me, Jimin said, stepping closer than the blocking required. You always have a choice, you just don't take it. A subtle shift rippled through the crew, someone whispered, the director didn't cut. Jungkook tilted his head slightly, eyes darkening. And what about you? He shot back, his voice sharper than the script allowed. You stand there acting like you're honest, like you don't hide behind excuses. That's not the line, someone murmured from behind the camera. But the truth is, Jungkook continued, ignoring it completely, you're just afraid to admit what you want. Silence. Heavy. Unscripted. Jimin's breath caught. They weren't acting anymore. Jungkook, the director, started. Don't cut, Jungkook said firmly, not even looking away from Jimin. Just let it run. There was hesitation. Then, keep rolling, the director muttered, curiosity winning over control. Jimin's pulse raced. This wasn't safe. This wasn't controlled. This was exactly the kind of moment he had spent years avoiding. But he didn't step back. Couldn't. You think I don't know what I want, Jimin said quietly, his voice trembling but not from the performance. Then say it, Jungkook challenged, taking a step closer. Say it right now. Jimin's mind screamed at him to stop. To laugh it off. To turn it into something the script could carry. But his heart was louder. You're asking me to ruin everything, Jimin whispered. I'm asking you to be honest, Jungkook replied. Their proximity sent a ripple through the room. Even the crew seemed frozen, caught between witnessing something extraordinary and something they weren't meant to see. Honesty doesn't always fix things, Jimin said, his voice breaking slightly. Sometimes it just destroys them. Jungkook shook his head slowly. Or maybe it finally makes them real. Jimin looked at him, then really looked. At the exhaustion in his eyes. At the stubbornness, the vulnerability, the quiet desperation he was no longer trying to hide. And suddenly, something inside Jimin snapped. You don't get to decide that for both of us, he burst out, louder than intended. You don't get to just confess and expect me to follow you like it's that easy, like I haven't been fighting this for years. The words echoed through the theater. Gasps followed. Jungkook froze. Years, he repeated, softer now. Jimin realized what he had just said. Too late. The room felt like it was closing in. I didn't mean. Yes, you did, Jungkook cut in, stepping even closer, his voice dropping to something intense, almost fragile. Don't take it back now. Jimin's throat tightened. He couldn't breathe. I tried to ignore it, he admitted, barely audible. I thought if I acted like it wasn't there, it would go away. And did it? Jimin shook his head. No. The confession landed like a shockwave. For a moment, no one moved. Not the crew. Not the director. Not even the air seemed to shift. Jungkook exhaled slowly, like something heavy had just been lifted from his chest. Then why keep pretending, he asked. Jimin laughed weakly, though there was no humor in it. Because pretending is safer. Jungkook's expression hardened, not in anger but in resolve. I don't want safe. Jimin met his gaze. I know. That was the problem. A long silence stretched between them. Then, unexpectedly, Jungkook reached out, his hand hovering for a brief second before gently grabbing Jimin's wrist again, this time not pulling, not forcing, just holding. Grounding. The gesture was small, but it sent a wave of murmurs through the room. Jungkook, someone warned under their breath. He didn't let go. Look at me, he said softly. Jimin did. And for the first time, there was no resistance left in his eyes. Only conflict. Only truth. If everything falls apart after this, Jungkook continued, his voice steady despite the chaos around them, at least we'll know we didn't lie to ourselves. Jimin's lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Because deep down, he knew Jungkook was right. And that terrified him more than anything else. A sudden sharp voice cut through the moment. That's enough. The director stood up abruptly, tension written all over his face. We're stopping here, everyone take 5. The spell broke instantly. The crew erupted into quiet chatter, whispers spreading like wildfire. What was that? Was that part of the scene? Did they just? Jimin pulled his wrist back this time, stepping away, his chest rising and falling rapidly. Reality rushed back in, harsh and unforgiving. He couldn't do this. Not here. Not like this. We shouldn't have done that, he said, his voice low but urgent. Jungkook's expression didn't change. Done what? Told the truth. Jimin ran a hand through his hair, frustration and panic mixing together. In front of everyone. So what? Jungkook replied, his tone sharpening again. Are you more afraid of them knowing or of it being real? Jimin didn't answer. Because he didn't know. Or maybe. He knew exactly which one scared him more. The noise around them grew louder, the outside world creeping back in, threatening to swallow the fragile moment they had created. Jimin took a step back. Then another. We'll talk later, he said quickly, almost like he was retreating from something dangerous. not here. Jungkook watched him carefully. Later isn't forever, Jimin. I know. But his voice lacked certainty. And for the first time since this all began, Jungkook didn't try to stop him. Jimin turned and walked away, disappearing into the dim hallway beyond the stage, his thoughts spiraling, his heart refusing to settle. Behind him, Jungkook remained under the bright lights, standing still amidst the noise, the whispers, the questions. Alone. But no longer hiding. The hallway lights buzzed overhead, flickering just enough to make the shadows feel alive as Jimin walked faster than he meant to, his footsteps echoing too loudly against the narrow walls. Jimin. He stopped. Of course Jungkook would follow. He didn't turn around immediately. His chest rose and fell sharply, his hand pressed flat against the wall as if he needed something solid to keep himself from collapsing under the weight of everything that had just happened. Don't, Jimin said, his voice low but strained, not here. But Jungkook didn't listen. Then where? He demanded, his voice echoing just as much as Jimin's heartbeat. Because you keep saying later like it's a place we'll magically reach without actually doing anything. Jimin turned then, his eyes flashing. Because we're not alone, he snapped. Do you not understand that there are people everywhere and after what just happened? Good, Jungkook cut in sharply. Jimin blinked, thrown off. What? I said good, Jungkook repeated, stepping closer, his presence filling the narrow space between them. Maybe they should see it. Maybe it's about time we stop acting like this is something we have to hide. Jimin stared at him, disbelief mixing with something deeper. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious. That's reckless, Jimin shot back, his voice rising despite himself. That's not brave, Jungkook, that's reckless. You're not thinking about what happens after. And you're only thinking about that, Jungkook fired back instantly. You're so busy worrying about consequences that you won't even admit what's right in front of you. What's in front of me, Jimin said, his voice tightening, is something that could ruin everything we've built. Jungkook's expression shifted slightly, not anger, not frustration, but something more cutting. Everything, he echoed, or just the version of it you're comfortable with? The question hit too close. Jimin's jaw clenched. Don't twist my words. I'm not twisting anything, Jungkook replied. I'm trying to understand why you're so willing to protect everything except us. The word hung there. Us. Jimin looked away for a second, his defenses cracking under the pressure. There is no us, he said quietly. Jungkook laughed once, but there was no humor in it. Then what was that on stage, he asked. What was all of this? Jimin's silence stretched too long. And Jungkook saw it. That's what I thought, he said, his voice dropping softer but sharper. You can't even say it doesn't exist. Jimin exhaled shakily, running a hand through his hair again. This isn't fair, he muttered. You're forcing me into a corner. I'm asking you to stop running, Jungkook corrected. I'm not running. Then stay, Jungkook said immediately, stepping even closer, his voice lowering into something intense, almost pleading. Stay right here and talk to me without looking for an exit. Jimin froze. Because that was exactly what he had been doing, scanning the hallway, listening for footsteps, searching for a way out. And Jungkook had noticed. Of course he had. Why are you doing this? Jimin asked, his voice softer now, more vulnerable. Why now? Jungkook's expression flickered, something raw surfacing again. Because I almost lost the chance to say it, he admitted quietly. Jimin frowned. What does that mean? Jungkook hesitated. For the first time since this started, he looked uncertain. And that scared Jimin more than anything else. There was a meeting, Jungkook said finally, a few weeks ago about the next project. Jimin's chest tightened. What about it? They want me to go overseas, Jungkook continued. Long-term, new team, new schedule, everything. The words landed like a shock. What? Jimin's voice dropped barely above a whisper. Why didn't you tell me? Jungkook's gaze hardened slightly. When was I supposed to? He asked. Between pretending everything's normal, between watching you act like none of this matters. That's not fair, Jimin said, but his voice lacked strength now. I didn't tell you because I didn't know how, Jungkook admitted. I kept waiting for the right moment, for something to change between us, for you to give me any sign that I wasn't the only one feeling this. Jimin's stomach twisted. And when that didn't happen, Jungkook continued, I realized if I leave like this without saying anything, then this, whatever this is, just disappears, like it never existed. Jimin shook his head slowly, trying to process. You're leaving, he repeated, as if saying it out loud might make it less real. It's not confirmed yet, Jungkook said, but it will be, and I don't want to walk away wondering what would have happened if I'd just been honest. Silence fell again, heavier than before. Jimin's thoughts spiraled. Leaving. Distance. An ending before anything had even begun. Why didn't you trust me enough to tell me earlier? Jimin asked, his voice quieter now, tinged with something that sounded dangerously close to hurt. Jungkook's eyes softened slightly. Because you didn't trust me either. That was the truth neither of them wanted to face. Jimin looked down, his chest tightening again. I thought I was protecting us, he said. From what? Jungkook asked. From losing everything, Jimin replied. Jungkook stepped closer, close enough that Jimin could feel the warmth of him again, the steady presence that had always been there, just never acknowledged like this. And now, Jungkook asked softly, if I leave, what exactly are you protecting? Jimin didn't answer. Because there was no good answer. Just fear. Just regret. Just the realization that maybe he had been holding onto something so tightly that he never gave it a chance to become real. You're really going to go? Jimin asked finally, his voice barely holding together. Jungkook watched him carefully. Do you want me to stay? The question was simple. But it carried everything. Jimin's lips parted. He could feel the answer rising, pushing against all the walls he had built over the years. Say it. Just say it. But the words got stuck. And that hesitation, that brief painful hesitation, was enough. Jungkook's expression shifted again, something in it dimming, like a light quietly going out. I see, he said softly. Jimin's heart dropped instantly. No, that's not. It's okay, Jungkook interrupted, though his voice sounded anything but okay. You don't have to force yourself. I'm not forcing anything, Jimin insisted, stepping forward now, panic creeping in. This is a lot and you dropped it all at once. And you still can't say it, Jungkook said, not accusing, just stating a fact. Jimin fell silent. Because again, he couldn't. Jungkook nodded slowly, as if confirming something to himself. Then maybe this is the answer, he said. What answer? Jimin asked, his voice breaking slightly. That I should go, Jungkook replied. The words hit harder than anything else so far. No, Jimin said immediately, the response slipping out before he could stop it. Jungkook looked at him sharply. No. Jimin's chest rose and fell, his thoughts chaotic, emotions crashing into each other. I don't want you to go, he admitted, his voice trembling now, raw and unfiltered. I don't know how to deal with this yet. Jungkook held his gaze searching. And if you don't figure it out before I leave? Jimin swallowed. The question lingered, heavy with possibility, heavy with loss. Then, Jimin hesitated, his voice softer now, almost breaking. Then I guess I'll have to live with that. Jungkook stared at him for a long moment. And then he smiled. But it wasn't the kind of smile Jimin was used to. It was quieter. Sadder. More final. Yeah, Jungkook said softly, I guess you will. Something inside Jimin cracked completely at that moment, but he didn't know how to stop it, didn't know how to fix it, didn't know how to say the one thing that could change everything. In that silence, that unbearable, suffocating silence, spoke louder than anything else. The rain started without warning. It hit the theater's old windows in sudden, violent sheets, the sound echoing through the corridors like a distant applause that didn't belong to any audience. Jimin didn't remember stepping outside, didn't remember walking past the staff or ignoring the calls behind him. He just knew he needed air. Cold, sharp, real air. But even outside, nothing felt clear. Jimin. He closed his eyes briefly. Of course. Footsteps splashed through puddles behind him, fast, determined. Jungkook didn't hesitate this time. He grabbed Jimin's arm, turning him around with more force than necessary. Stop walking away from me. Jimin pulled his arm back, frustration flashing instantly. I needed space. And I needed an answer, Jungkook shot back, rain soaking through his hair, his clothes, his voice trembling not just from emotion but from the cold. You think I can just give you that on command, Jimin demanded. You think feelings work like that? I think you've had enough time, Jungkook snapped, his voice breaking through the storm. Years, Jimin, you said it yourself. The word echoed between them again. Years. Jimin's chest tightened painfully. You think I didn't struggle? He said, stepping closer despite himself, rain clinging to his lashes. You think this was easy for me? I had to wake up every day and pretend I didn't feel something I couldn't explain, couldn't control. Then why keep pretending now? Jungkook interrupted, his voice sharp, desperate. Why stop when you've already admitted it? Because admitting it doesn't fix anything, Jimin yelled, his voice cracking as thunder rolled in the distance. It just makes it real, and once it's real, we can't go back. Why would you want to go back? Jungkook asked, stepping closer, his eyes searching, almost pleading. To what? To pretending we're just nothing. Jimin faltered. Because that wasn't what they were. It never had been. You're asking me to risk everything, Jimin said, quieter now, his voice trembling with something deeper than fear. And you're asking me to walk away from everything, Jungkook replied. The rain poured harder, soaking them completely now, the cold seeping into their bones, but neither of them moved. Neither of them cared. I didn't ask you to leave, Jimin said. No, Jungkook said, his voice softening but only slightly. You just didn't ask me to stay. That hurt more than anything. Jimin looked away, his vision blurring again, not from the rain this time. I don't know how to ask that, he admitted. Jungkook's expression shifted, something fragile breaking through the anger. Then stop thinking about how, he said, just tell me the truth. Jimin shook his head weakly. It's not that simple. It is, Jungkook insisted. You either want me here or you don't. That's not fair. It's the only thing that matters right now. The words echoed sharply, cutting through everything else. Jimin's heart pounded violently, his thoughts spinning out of control. Say it. Just say it. But fear wrapped around his throat again, suffocating, relentless. I don't want to lose you, Jimin said instead, the words spilling out like a compromise. Jungkook stilled. That's not the same thing, he said quietly. Jimin's chest tightened. I know. Silence followed, heavy and unbearable, filled only by the sound of rain hitting the ground, the roof, the world around them. Then Jungkook laughed softly, but it sounded broken. You know, he said, running a hand through his wet hair, I used to think if I just waited long enough you'd figure it out on your own. Jimin looked up at him, something fragile flickering in his expression. And now? Now I think maybe you already did, Jungkook replied. You just chose not to do anything about it. That's not true, Jimin whispered. Then prove it, Jungkook said immediately, stepping closer again, his voice dropping, intense, unwavering. Just once, stop holding back and say what you actually feel. Jimin's breath caught. Everything inside him screamed at once, fear, longing, doubt, hope, all colliding into something unbearable. A sudden flash of headlights cut through the rain. Both of them turned instinctively. A car had pulled up near the side entrance of the theater, engines still running, lights bright against the dark, stormy night. The driver's door opened. A figure stepped out holding an umbrella, their posture calm, deliberate. Jungkook's expression changed instantly. What are they doing here? He muttered. Jimin frowned. Who is that? The figure walked closer, the umbrella tilting just enough for their face to be visible under the harsh light. Jimin's stomach dropped. It wasn't just anyone. It was someone from the agency. And they were looking directly at them. Watching. Measuring. Judging. Well, the person called out, their voice carrying easily over the rain, this is unexpected. Jimin's pulse spiked. Jungkook's jaw tightened. Neither of them moved. The air shifted instantly, the tension morphing into something sharper, more dangerous. You two should be inside, the person continued, stepping closer, their gaze flicking between them with unsettling precision. Filming isn't over yet. We were just, Jimin started, but his voice faltered. Talking, the person finished, a faint smile tugging at their lips. It looked a little more serious than that. Jungkook stepped slightly in front of Jimin, not obviously, not dramatically, but enough to be noticed. "It's none of your concern," he said, his tone firm. The smile didn't fade. "Everything you do is our concern," the person replied calmly. "That's how this works, you know that." Jimin felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain. They had seen something. Or worse, they had seen enough. "Come inside," the person said after a moment, their tone shifting, less casual now, more authoritative. "We need to talk." Jungkook didn't move. Neither did Jimin. Because they both knew. This wasn't just about stepping back into the building. This was about consequences. Real ones. And for the first time, everything Jimin had been afraid of was no longer just in his head. The fluorescent lights in the conference room were too bright. Too cold. They buzzed faintly overhead, casting a pale glow over the long glass table where Jimin and Jungkook now sat side by side, but not touching, not even close. The distance between them felt louder than any argument. Across from them, the agency representative placed a folder down with slow, deliberate precision. "You've both been in this industry long enough," they began calmly, fingers tapping lightly against the surface, "to understand how quickly things can spiral when lines are blurred." Jimin kept his gaze fixed on the table. Jungkook didn't. "What exactly are you implying?" Jungkook asked, his voice steady but edged with something sharp. The representative smiled faintly, not unkind but not warm either. "I don't deal in implications," they replied. "I deal in what I see." Their eyes shifted between them again. And what I saw wasn't just two actors rehearsing. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Jimin's throat tightened. He could feel Jungkook's presence beside him like a heat he wasn't allowed to reach for. "You're over-interpreting," Jimin said finally, forcing his voice to remain controlled. It was an emotional scene. Things got intense. The representative tilted their head slightly, studying him. "Is that what you want to go with?" they asked. Jimin hesitated. Because it sounded weak even to his own ears. Jungkook let out a quiet breath beside him. "No," he said. Jimin's head snapped slightly toward him. "Jungkook. I'm not going to lie about it," Jungkook continued, his voice firm now, unwavering. "Not to you, not to anyone." The air shifted instantly. The representative's eyes sharpened, interest replacing neutrality. "Careful," they said softly, "this is the part where choices matter." Jungkook didn't look away. "I'm aware." Jimin felt panic rise again, fast and suffocating. "What are you doing?" he whispered under his breath. "This isn't the time." "When is the time then?" Jungkook shot back quietly but intensely, "Because every time it comes up you say the same thing." "This is different," Jimin insisted. "This isn't just about us anymore." "It never was just about us," Jungkook replied. That stung. Because it was true. The representative leaned back slightly, watching them like they were unraveling a story in real time. "So," they said, voice calm but cutting, "which version is it, the controlled narrative or the honest one?" Jimin's hands clenched under the table. Jungkook answered before he could. "The honest one." Jimin shut his eyes briefly. "Of course." "Go on," the representative said, their tone almost inviting. Jungkook exhaled slowly then spoke. "What you saw wasn't acting," he said, "not entirely." Jimin's heart slammed against his ribs. "You don't have to," he started again, but Jungkook's voice didn't stop. "There are feelings involved," Jungkook continued, each word deliberate, heavy, complicated ones that we haven't fully figured out yet. The room fell completely silent. Even the hum of the lights seemed to fade. The representative's expression didn't change much, but something in their gaze deepened, calculating, measuring impact, risk, outcome. "I see," they said after a moment. Jimin forced himself to speak then, his voice tight. "This doesn't change anything professionally," he said quickly. "We can keep things separate, it won't affect the project." The representative looked at him. "Won't it?" Jimin hesitated. Because after everything that had just happened, that was no longer something he could guarantee. "You broke scene continuity today," the representative continued. "You deviated from script, you created a situation where the crew is already questioning what's real and what is Their gaze shifted back to Jungkook. And now you're confirming that there is something real. Jungkook didn't flinch. Yes. Jimin felt something twist painfully in his chest. Do you understand what that means? The representative asked. Yes, Jungkook said. No, Jimin said at the same time. The overlap hung in the air. The representative noticed. Of course they did. That's the problem, they said quietly, you're not aligned. Jimin looked down again, his mind racing. Aligned? They weren't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. We can fix this, Jimin said quickly, almost desperately. We'll be more careful, we'll stick to the script. Whatever happened today, it won't happen again. Jungkook turned his head slowly toward him. There it was. That distance again. But sharper this time. You're saying that like it's a mistake, Jungkook said, his voice low. Jimin swallowed. I'm saying it's complicated. And hiding it makes it less complicated, Jungkook asked. Yes, Jimin replied immediately, in this case it does. The honesty of that answer cut deep. Jungkook looked away, jaw tightening. The representative watched the exchange closely, then leaned forward slightly. There are options, they said, their voice smooth, controlled, but none of them are easy. Jimin's pulse quickened. What kind of options? The representative opened the folder, sliding a document across the table. Option 1, they said, we contain this, strict boundaries, no unscripted interactions, minimal off-camera contact. You finish the project professionally and whatever this is, ends here. Jimin stared at the paper. Ends here. The words felt heavier than they should. And option 2, Jungkook asked. The representative's gaze shifted to him. You don't contain it, they said, in which case we control the narrative before it controls you. Jimin's head lifted sharply. What does that mean? It means statements, the representative replied. Image management, possibly reassignments, schedule changes, distance. Jimin's breath caught. Distance. Again. Jungkook didn't speak right away. The room felt like it was closing in. And if we refuse both, Jungkook asked finally. The representative held his gaze. Then you leave us no choice but to prioritize the company over individuals. Silence. Absolute. Unforgiving. Jimin's mind spun. This was it. This was the reality he had been trying to avoid. Not just feelings. Not just fear. But consequences. Real ones. What do you want? Jungkook asked suddenly, turning toward Jimin again. The question hit harder this time. Because now. It wasn't just emotional. It was everything. Jimin looked at him, really looked. At the defiance in his eyes. At the vulnerability he wasn't hiding anymore. At the unspoken question beneath everything else. Jews. Jimin started, his voice trembling. The words felt heavier than ever before. Because now whatever he said wouldn't just affect them. It would define them. I need time, he said finally. Jungkook's expression flickered. Disappointment. Again. But this time there was something else too. Understanding. Faint. Painful. But there. You don't have much of it, the representative said calmly. Jimin nodded slowly. I know. Jungkook leaned back in his chair, exhaling quietly, his gaze drifting toward the ceiling for a moment. Then back to Jimin. Time doesn't always give you answers, he said softly. Sometimes it just makes you realize what you already knew. Jimin's chest tightened. I'm trying, he said. Jungkook studied him for a long moment. I know, he replied. And somehow. That made it worse. Because trying wasn't the same as choosing. And in a situation like this, only one of those things actually changed anything. The door to the conference room closed with a soft click that sounded far louder than it should have. Jimin didn't move at first. The folder still lay open in front of him, the words blurring together, but one phrase kept echoing in his mind, distance. It felt like a decision already made, even though no one had said it out loud yet. 5 minutes, the representative had said before stepping out, decide. 5 minutes to choose between truth and safety. 5 minutes to either hold on or let go. Jimin exhaled slowly, pressing his palms against the cold glass table as if grounding himself. I didn't think it would come to this, he said quietly. Jungkook let out a dry laugh from across the room, packing now instead of sitting. You didn't think it would come to anything, he replied. Jimin flinched slightly. That's not fair. It is, Jungkook said, stopping abruptly, turning to face him. Because you always knew this was there, you just hoped it would never demand anything from you. Jimin looked up, his eyes tired, conflicted. And you, he asked. You think this is easy for me, but what about you? You think I don't see it? The way you push, the way you force everything into the open like it's the only way to deal with it. Jungkook's expression hardened. At least I'm dealing with it. And I'm not, Jimin shot back, standing now, his voice rising despite the small space. You think this, he gestured between them, frustrated, overwhelmed, isn't tearing me apart too? Then why does it feel like I'm the only one risking anything? Jungkook demanded. The question hit like a punch. Jimin opened his mouth. Closed it. Because again. He didn't have an answer that wouldn't hurt. Jungkook laughed again, quieter this time, more bitter. Exactly. That's not what this is, Jimin said quickly, stepping closer. I'm not choosing safety because I don't care, I'm choosing it because I care too much. Jungkook's eyes flashed. That doesn't make sense. It does to me, Jimin insisted, his voice breaking slightly. If we lose everything, our careers, the trust people have in us, the work we've built, then what do we have left? Jungkook didn't hesitate. Each other. The simplicity of the answer made Jimin's chest ache. And if that's not enough, Jimin asked quietly. Jungkook stilled. What? If it's not enough, Jimin repeated, his voice softer now, more fragile. If everything falls apart and all we have is this, and it doesn't survive either. The words hung heavy in the air. For the first time, Jungkook didn't answer immediately. Because that fear, that possibility, was real. You don't know that, Jungkook said finally, but there was less certainty in his voice now. Exactly, Jimin said, I don't know, and that's what scares me. Silence stretched between them, filled with everything they weren't saying. Then Jungkook shook his head slightly, stepping closer again, his voice dropping. You're so focused on what could go wrong that you're ignoring what's already right in front of you. Jimin's breath caught. And you're so focused on what you feel right now that you're ignoring everything else, Jimin countered. Because everything else doesn't matter if this is real, Jungkook said. It does matter, Jimin snapped louder now. Frustration spilling over. We don't live in a vacuum, Jungkook. There are consequences, there are expectations, there are people who will get hurt if we make the wrong move. And what about us? Jungkook asked, his voice cutting through everything else. Do we not count? Jimin froze. Because they did. Of course they did. But saying that out loud felt like stepping off a cliff. You do, Jimin admitted quietly. Jungkook held his gaze. Then act like it. Jimin's chest tightened again. I am acting like it, he insisted. I'm trying to protect us. By hiding, Jungkook challenged. By pretending this isn't real, that's not protection, that's denial. Jimin shook his head, frustration building again. You don't understand, he said. If we choose this, if we choose each other, we don't just get a happy ending, we get scrutiny, pressure, judgment, everything gets harder. Jungkook stepped even closer, his voice softer now but more intense. Then we deal with it together. Jimin looked at him, really looked, searching for any sign of doubt. But there wasn't any. That terrified him. Why are you so sure? Jimin asked. Jungkook didn't hesitate. Because I know what I feel. The certainty in that answer hit deeper than anything else. Jimin wished he could say the same so easily. I feel it too, Jimin admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Jungkook's breath caught. Then why is this so hard for you? Jimin laughed weakly, though there was no humor in it. Because feeling something and choosing it aren't the same thing. Jungkook's expression shifted, something softer, more understanding but still firm. They should be. Jimin shook his head. They're not. Another silence fell, heavier than before. The clock on the wall ticked louder now, each second slipping away faster than either of them wanted. We don't have time for this, Jungkook said finally. I know. Then decide. Jimin closed his eyes for a moment. His thoughts raced, memories, fears, possibilities, all colliding into something overwhelming. The way Jungkook had looked at him on stage. The way his voice had trembled when he said he didn't want it to end. The way everything felt more real in those moments than anything else. And the fear. The crushing, suffocating fear of losing it all. Say it, Jungkook said softly. Jimin opened his eyes. Jungkook was closer now. Too close. Close enough that Jimin could see every flicker of emotion in his gaze. Close enough that there was nowhere left to hide. What do you want? Jungkook asked. Jimin's heart pounded. The answer was right there. Simple. Terrifying. I want, Jimin started, his voice shaking. A knock interrupted them. Sharp. Sudden. Final. Both of them froze. The door opened before either of them could respond. The representative stepped back inside, their expression calm but expectant. Time up, they said. The moment shattered. Jimin stepped back instinctively, putting distance between them again. Jungkook didn't move. Have you made a decision? The representative asked. Jimin's chest rose and fell, his mind still racing, his heart still caught somewhere between fear and something far more dangerous. He looked at Jungkook. Jungkook held his gaze. Waiting. Not pushing this time. Just waiting. And somehow. That made it even harder. Jimin started again, his voice unsteady. This was it. No more time. No more delay. Just a choice. I can't, he said finally. The words landed heavy. Final. Silence filled the room. Jungkook didn't react immediately. Didn't move. Didn't speak. And that stillness, that quiet, controlled stillness, was worse than anger. What does that mean? The representative asked calmly. Jimin swallowed hard. It means, he struggled, forcing the words out, we choose the first option. Contain it. Hide it. End it. The room felt colder instantly. Jungkook's gaze dropped for the first time. Just for a second. But Jimin saw it. That flicker. That small, almost invisible break. Understood, the representative said, already reaching for the folder. We'll proceed accordingly. Jimin nodded weakly. But Jungkook. Jungkook still hadn't said anything. Jungkook, the representative prompted. Slowly, Jungkook lifted his head again. His expression was calm. Too calm. Yeah, he said quietly, understood. Jimin's chest tightened painfully. Because that tone. That distance. It was exactly what he had been trying to avoid. And yet, he was the one who created it. The rules took effect immediately. No one announced them publicly, but everyone felt them. Jimin felt them most. The next morning, the set looked the same stage, the same lights, the same crew moving in quiet efficiency, but something invisible had shifted. Conversations lowered when he walked by. Eyes lingered just a second too long, not accusatory, not openly suspicious, but aware. They knew something had happened. Maybe not everything, but enough. Positions, the director called, clapping his hands, we're behind schedule. Jimin stepped into place automatically, script in hand, heart steady only on the surface. He didn't look toward Jungkook at first. He didn't have to. He could feel him there. But when he finally did, the difference hit harder than expected. Jungkook was already in position, focused, composed, distant. Professional. Too professional. Ready? The director asked. Jungkook nodded. Jimin followed a second later. Action. They moved through the scene flawlessly. Lines delivered on cue. Marks hit perfectly. No hesitation. No deviation. No truth. It was exactly what they were supposed to do. And it felt completely wrong. You're leaving, Jimin said, the line coming out smooth, controlled, exactly as written. I don't have a choice, Jungkook replied, equally precise. No extra weight. No hidden meaning. Nothing. Jimin felt something twist painfully inside his chest. This was what he chose. This was what safe looked like. And suddenly, it felt unbearable. Cut, the director called, that's better, that's exactly the tone we need. A few crew members nodded in agreement, relieved. Jimin didn't feel relieved. He felt empty. Reset for the next scene, someone called. Jimin stepped away, lowering his gaze, trying to ignore the heaviness pressing down on him. He barely noticed when someone approached until a hand lightly tapped his shoulder. Hey! Jimin turned slightly. It was one of the stylists, offering him a quick, polite smile. You okay? You look a little pale. Jimin forced a small smile back. I'm fine, just tired. She studied him for a second, then nodded. Get some rest when you can, she said before walking off. Jimin exhaled slowly. Tired. That was one word for it. Across the set, Jungkook was already surrounded by staff, makeup touch-ups, wardrobe adjustments, quiet conversations. He responded politely, professionally, giving nothing away. Not a glance. Not a flicker. Nothing. It shouldn't have hurt. This was what Jimin wanted. Distance. Control. Safety. So why did it feel like something was slipping further away with every second? Jimin, you're up next. He nodded, forcing himself back into motion. Scene after scene passed like that. Perfect. Controlled. Empty. Until. Break, the director finally called, 15 minutes. The tension eased slightly across the set as people dispersed, stretching, chatting, checking phones. Jimin stepped off the stage, his mind elsewhere, his chest still heavy. He needed air again. But this time he didn't make it far. Jimin. The voice stopped him instantly. He turned slowly. Jungkook stood a few steps away. Alone. For the first time since yesterday. Jimin's pulse quickened. What are you doing? He asked quietly. We're not supposed to talk. Jungkook finished, his tone calm. Jimin hesitated. Yes. Jungkook nodded slightly, as if he had expected that answer. Right, he said, of course. The way he said it. Calm. Detached. It felt wrong. Then I'll keep it simple, Jungkook continued. I just need to know one thing. Jimin's chest tightened. What? Jungkook met his gaze. Was any of it real for you? The question hit harder than anything before. Jimin frowned slightly. You know it was. Do I? Jungkook asked. Jimin's breath caught. Why would you ask that? Because right now, Jungkook said, his voice still steady, still controlled, it feels like I imagined all of it. Jimin shook his head quickly. You didn't. Then explain this, Jungkook said, gesturing slightly around them. Explain how we go from that to this. Jimin struggled for words. It's not that simple, he said. Jungkook let out a quiet breath. That's your answer for everything. Because everything is complicated, Jimin shot back, frustration creeping in again. No. Jungkook said, you make it complicated. Jimin stared at him. You think I want this? He asked. You think I want to feel like this, to pretend like nothing happened when it clearly did? Then don't pretend, Jungkook said. I don't have a choice. You always have a choice, Jungkook replied immediately. Not this time, Jimin said, his voice tightening, not when the consequences are this big. Jungkook studied him for a moment. And what about the consequences of this, he asked quietly, of choosing to ignore it? Jimin didn't answer. Because he was living them. Right now. In every empty line. In every forced glance. In every moment that felt hollow. You said you didn't want to lose me, Jungkook continued. I don't. Then why does it feel like you already did? The words hit deep. Jimin's chest tightened painfully. I haven't lost you, he said, but his voice sounded weak even to himself. Jungkook's expression didn't change. Then what am I to you right now, he asked. Jimin froze. Because he didn't know how to answer that without making everything worse. A co-actor, Jungkook offered, his tone neutral, a colleague. That's not fair, Jimin said quietly. It's accurate, Jungkook replied. Silence stretched between them again. Heavy. Unavoidable. I'm trying to protect what we have, Jimin said finally. Jungkook shook his head slowly. No, he said, you're protecting what you're used to. Jimin flinched. And in the process, Jungkook added, his voice soft but cutting, you're losing what we could have had. That hurt. More than anything else. Jimin looked away, his vision blurring slightly again. I don't know how to fix this, he admitted. Jungkook was quiet for a moment. Then, you don't fix it, he said, you choose it. Jimin closed his eyes briefly. That word again. Choose. It sounded so simple. But it felt impossible. I already made a choice, Jimin said quietly. Jungkook nodded. Yeah, he said. The agreement didn't feel like agreement. It felt like acceptance. In that scared Jimin more than anything else. Jungkook, he started, his voice softer now, more uncertain. But Jungkook stepped back. Not abruptly. Not dramatically. Just enough. Don't, he said gently. Jimin's breath caught. Don't what? Don't say something you're not ready to stand by, Jungkook replied. The calmness in his voice made it worse. I'm not. You are, Jungkook said, not harsh, just honest, and I don't think I can hear it right now. Jimin felt something crack inside him again. Because this time, Jungkook wasn't fighting. He wasn't pushing. He wasn't asking. He was pulling away. Break's almost over, Jungkook added after a moment, glancing toward the set. Jimin didn't move. Jungkook, wait. But Jungkook shook his head slightly. Not like this, he said. And then he turned. Walking back toward the stage. Back into the lights. Back into the version of everything that was safe. And empty. Jimin stood there watching him go, his chest tight, his thoughts louder than ever. Because for the first time, it wasn't about choosing between fear and truth anymore. It was about realizing. He might have already chosen. And it might have cost him everything that mattered. The silence between them didn't just stay on set, it followed them everywhere. It settled into the van rides, where conversations used to flow easily but now felt forced, shallow, carefully measured. It lingered in dressing rooms where their eyes avoided each other, like looking too long might reopen something neither of them knew how to close. It even crept into the smallest habits, where they stood, how they spoke, the way they laughed. Everything was the same. And completely different. Jimin noticed it in the details. Jungkook no longer waited for him after scenes, no longer leaned over to quietly joke between takes, no longer looked at him like there was something unspoken hanging between them. Now Jungkook treated him like everyone else. Polite. Distant. Professional. And somehow, that hurt more than the arguments. Focus, Jimin, the director called out, snapping him back. You missed your cue again. Jimin blinked, realizing the scene had already moved past him. Sorry, he muttered, stepping forward quickly. Across from him, Jungkook didn't react. Didn't help. Didn't adjust. Just continued the scene like Jimin's mistake didn't matter. Like Jimin didn't matter. The thought stung more than it should. Reset, the director sighed, let's go again. They ran the scene again. This time Jimin hit every line perfectly. Every mark. Every cue. And still, it felt wrong. Because Jungkook's eyes no longer searched for his. They just passed over him. Like there was nothing left to find. Cut, good, the director said, satisfied. That's the energy we need. Energy. Jimin almost laughed. If only they knew how much energy it took to pretend like nothing had happened. Break came again, but this time Jimin didn't try to leave. He stayed. Watched. Waited. Jungkook sat on a chair near the edge of the stage, scrolling through his phone, completely absorbed or pretending to be. Jimin hesitated for only a second before walking over. He stopped a few steps away. Can we talk? Jungkook didn't look up immediately. About what? The question was simple. Too simple. Jimin's chest tightened. Don't do that, he said quietly. Do what? Jungkook replied, finally glancing up, his expression neutral. Act like nothing happened, Jimin said. Jungkook held his gaze for a moment. Then, isn't that what you wanted? He asked. The words landed softly. But they cut deep. That's not. You made it pretty clear, Jungkook continued, standing now, slipping his phone into his pocket. We keep things professional, we contain it, we move on. Jimin shook his head, frustration rising again. I said that because I didn't know what else to do. And now you do, Jungkook asked. Jimin hesitated. Because. No. He didn't. I just know this doesn't feel right, Jimin admitted. Jungkook let out a quiet breath, looking away for a moment before meeting his gaze again. It doesn't feel right to me either, he said, but it's what you chose. You agreed to it, Jimin pointed out. Jungkook gave a faint, almost ironic smile. Yeah, he said, because you did. That answer hit harder than expected. Jimin stepped closer, lowering his voice. So what, you're just going to shut everything off, like it meant nothing? Jungkook's expression shifted slightly. Not angry. Not defensive. Just tired. I'm not shutting it off, he said. I'm respecting your decision. It's not that simple. It is for me, Jungkook replied. Jimin stared at him. You're lying. Jungkook's eyes flickered briefly. Am I? Yes, Jimin said firmly, because I know you and this isn't you. Jungkook held his gaze for a long moment. Then stepped closer. Close enough that the distance they'd been maintaining suddenly felt impossible. You don't get to say that, Jungkook said quietly. Jimin's breath caught. Why not? Because you're the one who pushed me here, Jungkook replied. The words hit hard. Jimin swallowed. I didn't push you anywhere. You did, Jungkook insisted, his voice still low but more intense now. You made a choice, Jimin, and now you don't like what that choice looks like. Jimin shook his head, his voice rising slightly. I didn't expect you to just give up. Something in Jungkook's expression snapped. Give up, he repeated sharper now, you think that's what this is. What else am I supposed to think? Jimin shot back. You're acting like nothing matters, like I don't matter. That's not true, Jungkook interrupted, his voice suddenly louder, drawing a few glances from nearby staff. Then what is it? Jimin demanded. Jungkook took a step closer, his eyes locked onto Jimin's, something raw breaking through the controlled surface. It's self-control, he said, something you wanted from the start. Jimin faltered. That's not. You didn't want this to get messy, Jungkook continued, his voice tightening. You didn't want it to be real, so I'm making sure it's not. That's not what I said. It's what you meant. Jimin's chest tightened painfully. No, he said, his voice softer now, more desperate. That's not what I meant. Jungkook studied him carefully. Then what did you mean? He asked. Jimin opened his mouth. And hesitated. Again. Jungkook saw it. Of course he did. And this time. He didn't wait. That's the problem, Jungkook said quietly, you never actually say it. Jimin's frustration boiled over. Because I'm scared, he snapped, the words finally breaking free. The room felt quieter around them. Jungkook stilled. Jimin's breathing was uneven now. His emotions spilling out faster than he could control them. I'm scared of what this means, he continued, his voice trembling. I'm scared of what happens if we choose it and everything falls apart. I'm scared of losing you completely because we tried something we couldn't handle. Jungkook's expression softened slightly. But only slightly. And I'm scared of losing you because we didn't try at all, he replied. The honesty in that answer hit just as hard. Jimin's eyes stung. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. Jungkook stepped closer again. You don't have to know, he said, you just have to decide if it's worth it. Jimin looked at him, his heart pounding, his thoughts racing. Worth it? Was it worth risking everything? Was it worth stepping into something uncertain, something complicated, something that could break them both? I don't know, Jimin whispered. Jungkook nodded slowly. I figured, he said. In that quiet acceptance was worse than any argument. Jungkook. No, Jungkook said gently but firmly, don't say anything else. Jimin froze. Why? Because I don't think I can keep going in circles like this, Jungkook replied, not when I already know where you stand. That's not fair, Jimin said again, his voice breaking slightly. It's reality, Jungkook said. Jimin shook his head, panic rising again. No, it's not, you're just giving up on me. Jungkook's expression hardened slightly. I'm not giving up on you, he said, I'm accepting that you're not ready. And what if I never am? Jimin asked quietly. Jungkook held his gaze. Then I guess this is where it ends. The words hit like a final blow. Jimin felt his chest tighten so sharply it almost hurt to breathe. Ends, he repeated. Jungkook nodded once. Yeah. Not dramatic. Not emotional. Just certain. And that certainty. That calm, controlled certainty terrified Jimin more than anything else. Because for the first time, it didn't feel like Jungkook was waiting anymore. It felt like he was letting go, the night felt quieter than it had any right to be. Filming had ended hours ago, the crew long gone, the lights shut off one by one until the theater returned to its natural state, dim, hollow, echoing with the ghosts of things left unsaid. Jimin stood at the edge of the stage, staring out into the empty seats. It looked exactly the same as the first night. And yet, everything had changed. His fingers curled slightly at his sides, remembering the warmth that had once been there, the pull, the moment that had started everything. If this is our story, I don't want it to end. The words echoed in his mind, softer now but heavier. Back then they had felt like a beginning. Now, they felt like something he had already lost. Footsteps broke the silence behind him. Jimin didn't turn immediately. He already knew who it was. Jungkook stopped a few steps away, not too close, not too far. The distance between them was careful now, measured, deliberate. Like everything else. I thought you'd be here, Jungkook said quietly. Jimin let out a small breath. Yeah, he replied, I guess I always end up here. A faint pause settled between them, filled with everything they no longer said out loud. The set's cleared, Jungkook added, we're officially done. Done. The word lingered in the air. Jimin nodded slowly. I heard. Neither of them moved. Neither of them filled the silence. Because this time, there was nothing left to argue about. Jimin finally turned. Jungkook looked the same. But not really. There was something quieter in his eyes now, something that had settled instead of burning. And that hurt in a different way. So this is it, Jimin said softly. Jungkook tilted his head slightly. That depends, he replied. On what? Jungkook looked at him for a long moment before answering. On whether you came here to say goodbye or something else. Jimin's chest tightened. Because even now, even after everything, Jungkook was giving him a choice. One last time. The stage creaked faintly under Jimin's step as he moved closer, the sound echoing in the empty space like a quiet reminder of where they had begun. I've been thinking, Jimin said. Jungkook didn't interrupt. Didn't push. Just listened. I kept telling myself I was protecting everything, Jimin continued, his voice steady but soft. Our work, our future, the people around us. Jungkook's gaze didn't waver. And maybe that's true, Jimin added, maybe I was. A pause. Then. But I was also protecting myself. The honesty hung in the air, fragile but undeniable. Jungkook exhaled quietly. I know. Jimin swallowed, his throat tight. I thought if I didn't choose then I wouldn't lose anything, he admitted, but that's not how it works. Jungkook's expression softened slightly. No, he said, it's not. Jimin let out a small, shaky breath. I already lost something, he continued, the moment I let fear decide for me. Silence followed. Not heavy this time. Just real. Jungkook looked down briefly, then back up. And now, he asked. Jimin met his gaze. Now I understand what you meant, he said, about choosing. Jungkook didn't react immediately. Didn't let hope show too quickly. What are you choosing, he asked quietly. Jimin hesitated. Not out of fear this time. But because he wanted to get it right. I'm choosing to be honest, he said finally, even if it's late, even if it doesn't change anything. Jungkook's eyes searched his. And what's the truth? Jimin's heart pounded. But this time, he didn't stop. I care about you, he said, more than I ever let myself admit, and not just as someone I work with, not just as something safe. Jungkook's breath caught, almost imperceptibly. Jimin stepped closer. But I'm still scared, he added, that hasn't changed. Jungkook nodded slowly. It doesn't have to, he said. Jimin let out a small breath. I don't know what happens next, he continued. I don't know if we can make this work, I don't know if everything will fall apart. Jungkook watched him carefully. But, he prompted. Jimin gave a faint, almost nervous smile. But I don't want to walk away without trying. The words settled between them. Simple. Honest. Late. But real. Jungkook closed his eyes for a brief moment, as if letting that sink in, as if weighing it against everything that had happened. When he opened them again, there was something different there. Not the same intensity as before. Not the same urgency, but something steadier. Something real in a different way. You really took your time, Jungkook said quietly. Jimin laughed softly, a little embarrassed, a little relieved. Yeah, he admitted, I did. A small silence followed. Then Jungkook stepped forward, closing the distance that had felt impossible for so long. Not rushing. Not forcing. Just meeting him halfway. I meant what I said, Jungkook said, about not wanting this to end. Jimin nodded. I know. Jungkook studied him for a moment longer. And I meant it when I said I wouldn't wait forever. Jimin's chest tightened slightly. I know that too. Another pause. But this one didn't feel like an ending. So what happens now? Jimin asked. Jungkook glanced around the empty theater, then back at him. Now he said we stop pretending. Jimin felt something shift inside him. Not everything was solved. Not everything was certain. But something real, had finally been chosen. Okay, Jimin said softly. Jungkook's lips curved into a faint, genuine smile. Okay. They stood there for a moment longer under the dim light of a stage that had witnessed everything, the beginning, the conflict, the breaking point, and now something quieter. Not a perfect ending. Not a dramatic resolution. But a choice. And sometimes, that was enough. As they walked off the stage together, side by side, the theater remained silent behind them. No applause. No audience. Just the echo of something that had finally found its voice.